I just watched two Allstate adjusters admit, under oath, exactly how this company scripts its lies. Senator Hawley asked one question, and the answer should terrify every homeowner in America. These weren't rogue employees. They confessed it was company policy, a pattern. A hurricane tore through Miguel's home in Georgia, and Allstate's own adjuster called it the worst damage of his career. Then they pulled him off her case for telling the truth. The next adjuster was ordered to slash her claim by hundreds of thousands and bury the real number. This isn't an insurance company. It's a machine built to profit off your worst day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vitale. Thanks to all of the witnesses. We'll now have some rounds of questioning. I will start, and let me start with you, Ms. Miguel. So it's September 27th, 2024, Hurricane Helene hits Georgia, hits your home, causing very significant damage. I think we've got a picture of some of the damage here. Let's have a look. Does this look pretty familiar to you?
It does.
It looks pretty severe. I mean, that's a massive tree right there in the front part of your home, and you're an Allstate policyholder. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Allstate sends out an adjuster. You said pretty quickly, just a moment ago. Is that
about
correct?
3 weeks after?
Oh well, that's not very quick. Okay, 3 weeks after. All right, and that you were told at the time in this first inspection verbally that the adjuster agreed with you. This was very severe damage. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
I think we maybe have a second picture. Let's look at another view of this just to give a real impression. Here's a breezeway that looks to be nearly completely destroyed. You can see some of that roof damage, quite extensive, that you were talking about in your testimony. All of this looks familiar to you, I'm sure.
Yes.
Now, after this first adjuster agrees with you that, yes, there's very significant damage, what did Allstate, when they finally came back with an actual assessment, a real number, what was that number again?
$46,000.
$46,000. So you went to considerable expense on your own. You hired your own independent adjuster to come back out and do all of this over again. And that person, looking at all of this evidence, that person found that the damage was in the neighborhood of what?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how your independent adjuster, how much did that person estimate the damage was?
$497,000.
$497,000. Allstate offered you 40, basically.
Correct.
And you're still waiting for this process to be resolved all this time later. Is that right?
That's right.
Let me just ask you now, Mr. Schroeder, because you were that first adjuster who worked for Allstate who came out to look at this home. You were a field adjuster deployed for Allstate through pilot catastrophe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you were the first one to inspect Ms. Miguel's home after the hurricane. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you went in person, I think. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you spent several hours, Ms. Miguel said in her testimony a moment ago, you spent several hours doing a very thorough inspection. Is that your memory also?
Yeah, that's correct.
And how serious would you say the damage was in your own, just your personal recollection?
Extremely, probably the most serious that I saw on this deployment.
Wow, the most serious that you saw on the deployment, which makes sense given these photos. So you start, if I understand correctly, you start to prepare an estimate for a full replacement of this breezeway right here. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But then you were instructed, you were told by the higher ups, no, we're not going to do a full replacement of the breezeway. So only do an assessment for a partial replacement of the breezeway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
So then you start working on that, and you're working to get as big of a damage claim as you can for Ms. Miguel in line with the facts after you've already been told, no, we're not going to do the full thing. And then before you can even complete your work, you're taken off the case. Is that right?
Yes.
Why do you think that happened?
I was told it was due to time I was taking too long, but I don't believe that is the case. I think that Allstate saw from this and my recently prior estimates of being very thorough and complete and going back and forth with reviewers on coverage that it was going to be a higher estimate and it would be more cost effective to reassign it to an adjuster that would listen better.
Yeah, an adjuster who would lowball the policyholder. Really, I mean that's what we're talking about. You're removed from the case. It took 3 weeks to send you out to begin with, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're removed once it looks like you're actually going to do some justice for Ms. Miguel. Let me just ask you more broadly, Mr. Schroeder, have you ever been told to change estimates to reduce payouts?
Yeah, frequently.
And when you've pushed back on this, if you've ever said no, what happens then?
If I say no, then the claims typically get reassigned due to, they say, either lack of compliance or other reasons, like I'm taking too long.
In your experience, was this kind of thing a one-off thing, or was this a pattern?
This was definitely a pattern.
Is it fair to say then that Allstate's priority in your experience was not getting the best possible award for their clients, it was in protecting their bottom line?
Certainly in protecting their bottom line, yeah.
Mr. Milliken, let me just come to you, because you were then yet another adjuster in this same case sent out to look at Ms. Miguel's property. You worked as a field adjuster for Allstate through pilot catastrophe for about 8 years. Do I have that right?
At least 8 years, yes.
Yeah. In that time, you have personally inspected hundreds of properties damaged after storms and disasters. Is that fair to say?
Thousands.
Thousands. And you're trained to determine the extent and cause of the damage and how much it costs to repair it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me just ask you about Ms. Miguel's claim. You were assigned to re-inspect her home, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified earlier that you went about that diligently. You could see that there was very extensive damage. That was your initial impression. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And you reviewed all of the reports. There was an engineer's report by this time. There was the public adjuster's report. You reviewed all of those things diligently. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
When you submitted your report to Allstate recommending several $100,000 worth of payments to Ms. Miguel and her husband, what happened then?
My estimate was rejected, and I was advised to alter it to a lower figure.
So you were told to alter the estimate and to alter your findings as well?
I was told to alter my estimate. I don't know that the findings was told to be altered.
Were the alterations that you were told to make, were those consistent with your own review of the property and your own assessment of the damage?
No, no, sir.
Did you write that up in a detailed estimate, what you were told to do?
I did, yes, sir.
And Allstate then, they send that estimate ultimately to the property owner, is that correct?
I'm obligated to send the estimate to the policyholder.
And is there any record anywhere the policyholder would ever know that your initial findings, your recommendations were rejected and somebody told you to come in and alter them?
No, sir.
Let me just ask you more broadly, have you ever been told in other cases with Allstate to alter or delete your findings?
Absolutely.
In fact, you testified just a second ago, I think, that you were frequently asked to alter factual findings, delete material, and sometimes include items that were false. Did I hear you correctly when you said that?
Yes, sir.
In the overwhelming majority of cases where you were asked to do something like this, did that cause the estimate to the policyholder to go up or to go down?
To go down.
What is your assessment of what Allstate's ultimate goal here is? Is it to pay out the policy according to the terms of the policy to the best extent they can, or is it to protect their bottom line and to use you and your report as necessary to meet that end, to make sure they make as much money as possible?
100% to use me to enable them to make as much money as possible.
And you would say that this is a pattern. This isn't just something that happened one time like in Ms. Miguel's case. You've been doing this for a long time, and you've observed this to be a pattern with Allstate and in the industry.
I have, yes, sir.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Kim.
I want to walk you through what actually happened in this hearing, because underneath the outrage, there's a real mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. 3 separate witnesses under oath described the exact same playbook. That repetition is what should actually worry you. Take Miguel's case. Hurricane Helene tore through her home in Georgia in September of 2024. The damage was so severe that Allstate's own field adjuster called it the worst he'd seen on his entire deployment. That adjuster, a man named Schroeder, started preparing an estimate for a full replacement of her destroyed breezeway. Then his superiors stepped in. No, they said, scale it back to a partial repair. Before he could even finish that revised estimate, he was pulled off the case entirely. Why does that matter? Because the field adjuster is supposed to be your first line of defense. He's the person who walks through the wreckage and tells the company the truth about what it will actually cost to make you whole. When that person is removed the moment his numbers start climbing, you're not looking at an administrative reshuffle. You're looking at a company managing its exposure, not managing your claim. So Allstate sent someone else. An adjuster named Milliken, who had personally inspected thousands of properties over 8 years. He reviewed everything, the engineer's report, the public adjuster's findings. He submitted an estimate for several $100,000 in damages. It was rejected. He testified he was told directly to alter his own findings and lower the number. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. He said this wasn't unusual at all. He said he'd been told to alter findings, delete material, and sometimes include information that simply wasn't true. Almost every time, he said, the number went down, never up. That's not a rogue employee. That's a pattern, confirmed independently by 2 adjusters who never once compared notes. Now here's something most people don't know. Insurance in this country isn't regulated by a federal agency the way banking or securities are. Back in 1945, Congress passed the McCarran-Ferguson Act, and it left insurance regulation almost entirely to the states. That means 50 different regulators, 50 different rule books. Most states did adopt a model law called the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act. It requires insurers to investigate claims honestly and settle them in good faith. When they don't, courts in many states allow what's called a bad faith claim, real legal exposure, sometimes with punitive damages attached. But bad faith cases take years, take money, and require exactly what Miguel had to do: hire your own expert and fight. Most families can't. And that's not an accident, that's the business model. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not imagining it. After Hurricane Katrina, whistleblowers at another major insurer came forward with strikingly similar claims. They said engineers were pressured to rewrite reports, so wind damage, which was covered, got reclassified as flood damage, which usually wasn't. 2 claims adjusters risked their careers to expose it. 2 decades and several hurricanes later, we're watching the same story with different names. This isn't one bad company having one bad season. It's a playbook that survives because getting caught costs less than the money saved by lowballing. Think about what that does inside a company, day to day. Honest adjusters learn fast that thoroughness gets you reassigned. Schroeder said it himself when he pushed back. His claims got taken away for what management called lack of compliance. So what happens to the next adjuster watching that happen to a colleague? He learns the lesson the company is actually teaching him. Write it low. Keep your job. That's how you corrupt a system without ever writing a single corrupt instruction down on paper. You just quietly reward the adjusters who lowball and quietly remove the ones who don't. Multiply that across every field office and every hurricane season. This stops being about one homeowner in Georgia. It becomes the architecture of disaster recovery in this entire country. It's the family living in a hotel room for 8 extra months because the settlement wasn't enough to rebuild. It's the contractor who can't get paid because the check never covered the real cost of the work. It's the neighborhood that recovers slower, block by block, because the money never arrived at its real value. A delayed check becomes a delayed roof. A delayed roof becomes a ruined foundation. A ruined foundation becomes a family that gives up and sells the lot for less than it's worth. That's the chain nobody puts in the earnings call. I keep coming back to one line from that hearing. When Milliken was asked what Allstate's actual goal was, he didn't hesitate. He said it was to use him, and his report, to make sure the company made as much money as possible. That's a company's own field employee describing his employer's strategy, under oath, before the United States Senate. So what do we actually do with this? First, know that a lowball first offer is often just the opening move, not the final word. An independent adjuster can be the difference between $46,000 and $497,000. Second, state insurance commissioners need to actually use the enforcement power they already have on paper. Third, adjusters need real whistleblower protection, because right now the only people telling you the truth are the ones brave enough to risk their paycheck. Here's what I want you to sit with. We talk a lot about institutions being turned into instruments of power. This hearing is that same story, wearing a different uniform. It's not a senator bending the rules for power, It's a corporation bending the truth for profit, using the same tools: delay, pressure, quiet reassignment. Someone tells the truth. Someone with power doesn't like that truth. That person gets removed, and the story gets rewritten by whoever replaces them. If we only watch for that pattern in Congress, we'll miss it happening in our own mailbox. If you've ever been lowballed after a disaster, you now know you weren't imagining it, and you were very likely not alone. Institutions only stay honest when people outside them keep demanding receipts, including the fine print on your own policy.